what's up? PDX Guitar Freak here, and welcome to my lesson on how to play the song Somebody Get Me a Doctor from Van Halen. A couple of important things to mention before we get started. One is the guitar I'm using, I've got tuned down 1/2 step. Hopefully you know what that is, otherwise you've probably never played a Van Halen song before, but that's okay. Basically you take every string and you tune it down the equivalent of 1 fret. So E is tuned down to E flat, A is tuned down to A flat, etc., going through the strings. A couple things I'm going to do differently on this lesson. I mean, normally I just do the guitar solo, but I'm going to show you the entire song, all the riffs that are involved. I figured there's only a couple, I might as well just throw them in there. And then normally I start the lessons with a little section where I geek out and talk about music theory, you know, scales, modes, the general relationship between all the notes within the solo and how they fit within the song and all that. But I'm going to skip that this time because you know what, we're talking about Van fucking Halen, not Dream fucking Theater. And no offense to any Dream Theater fans, because those guys are majorly talented. It's just Van Halen wasn't a stick within the scale kind of guy. He always did things his own way, and it always worked, right? And if you're here, another thing I should mention is if you're here just to learn the solo, that's cool. Down below in the About or Notes or whatever section they call it when you watch this, by the time you watch this, I put the time where everything starts. So if you want to go to the solo, just look below and you can go right to it. Alright, let's get started. So the first opening chords here are pretty simple. You start with sort of an open G chord, but you're not going to play anything on the A string. What you're going to do, or the high E, what you're going to do is you're going to have the G note on the 3rd fret of the E string. You're going to mute the A string, which you can do with this finger if you like. So you're barely touching it, so it won't really, the note won't sound out. Open D, open G strings, and then the 3rd fret of the B string. And then the second chord is this kind of, I guess you can call it C sustained second chord. And that's basically kind of like a C chord where you add in D, the D note. And so you're going to keep your finger on the 3rd fret of the B string. You're going to move your finger to the 3rd fret of the A string, and you're going to mute the D string and play open G. So again, C note, 3rd fret of the A string, mute the D string, open G, and then the 3rd fret of the B string. And I've seen people play this song different ways. Some people will do like a standard C chord, or they'll play a C power chord as opposed to the C sustained second chord that I showed you. But I mean, to be honest, any of them are going to work. It's just to my ear, and from what I've seen when Van Halen plays it live, it appears he's doing that C sustained second chord. And then finally you've got a big open D chord. So you've got open A, open D, 2nd fret of the G string, and 3rd fret of the B string. And when you add that open A to the low end there, it just makes the chord bigger, fuller, more powerful sounding. And then you repeat those 3 chords, followed by an open E power chord, and then you do the the whammy bar dips, which should be self-explanatory. There's about 6 of them, followed by a long dip. So this next riff, you can call it the main riff or the chorus riff. Probably one of my favorite Van Halen riffs of all time. I mean, it just has this mean kind of badass vibe to it that's just really fun to play. And it's a kind of A minor pentatonic for the most part, with the inclusion of the 6th note in there, which is very common. But that's very very typical of the 70s, right? To have the A minor pentatonic riffs, and and so basically it starts with, and I'll turn off my delay and a little bit of delay and reverb so you hear it more purely. You start off with the 3rd fret of the A string, followed by an open A power chord. And I've seen people take that 3rd fret on the A string and give it a slight bend, like maybe a 1/4 step, almost 1/2 step bend, and I find myself doing that too occasionally, and that works too. And then after that, you're going to mute your strings with your left hand, and you're going to do 2 little rhythm scratches, followed by open A. And then you're going to do open D and open G, followed by the D and G strings at the 2nd fret. So again, so far we have this. I'll play it slow. And you make sure you don't want, when you do the open D and G, you want to make sure that the A note right before it, they don't blend together, so you kind of want to try to mute it a little bit before you do that. It's a technique that comes with time. And so that's the first half of the riff. And then you're going to slide up to the 7th fret of the A string, followed by the D and G strings at the 5th fret. Open A. And then the last 2 chords in this riff, you're going to start by barring your finger across the 7th fret of the D, G, and B strings. I use my ring finger. But before you play the chord, you're going to add your pinky to the 8th fret of the B string. And then lift up the pinky and play the 7th fret of the D, G, and B strings and give it a left hand vibrato. And then what you want to do is you're going to kind of pick and you're going to do a slide down the string. And that happens after every riff. And you know, that that little slide down there, I've seen people tab it a couple different ways, and sometimes they'll say, oh, it's the 12th fret of the E string, or the 17th fret, or the 7th fret of the E string, or whatever. They're trying to find the same note every time, but don't get hung up on where you do it from. It's going to sound good, almost anywhere you pick from. Because to be honest, I mean, that's just the sort of thing that Eddie just felt. I mean, you just got to feel that kind of move, or it's going to look really dorky if you're looking for that place to fret. I mean, you're like, I know I'm hammering this point home, but watch when I slow down the video and look how really freaking dorky it looks when you try to find that note every time. See what I mean? It's just, you just gotta just do it. All right, let's move on to the next riff. This next riff I call the verse riff, and it's pretty straightforward. You basically do an E major chord by first taking your index finger on the 7th fret of the A string, and then bar your ring finger across the D, G, and B strings to the 9th fret. You play that chord 3 times, followed by the open E and the 7th fret of the A together, palm muted. Then you take that E major chord and you just do an F major chord, just move it up 1 fret. You've got the pick slide followed by just a tapped slide. Pretty straightforward. And then right before the guitar solo, he does a slight variation where he kind of keeps going up the neck, and he adds some different variations of the palm muted open E and 7th fret A. And I'll show you just here. Do it slow. Pretty straightforward. And this riff is what we call the pre-solo. I call the pre-solo riff. It's probably the most tricky rhythm part of the song, but once you break it down into little sections, it becomes not too difficult. So you start with an open A, power chord, palm muted. And you'll notice in my tabs that the second time I just do the open A, but you can do this full chord twice. And then you're going to bar your index finger against the 5th fret of the G and B strings, and then pull off to the open E and G strings. And then 2 muted scratches on the B and G strings or wherever. And then you're going to take your ring finger, barred across the 7th fret of the G and B strings, and pull off to the 5th fret of the G and B strings, and then do kind of a slight quarter step bend. And you're going to play the 7th fret of the D string and add some vibrato. And then you're going to do a little muted scratch, and then open A power chord twice. Here it is slow. And then you're going to take your volume knob, get it down real quick, and you're going to play, bar your, I do my index finger across the 5th fret of the D, G, and B strings. Play that note and then slowly raise your volume. And then back to the beginning. And repeat a couple times. And then you hit open A, and then you're going to go into the solo. And that's coming up. So the first opening lick here, you're coming out of that. You're coming out of that riff, and then after you do the volume swell up, you're going to hit open A, and then you're going to do like a pre-bend. So you're going to quickly move this at the 7th fret of the G string. You're going to quickly bend up about a full step, do a semi-artificial pinch harmonic, and then go down. And then you do a pull off to the 5th fret of the G string. You're pulling off to the 5th fret of the G string there. And then you're going to do some, they call tremolo picking. Nothing to do with the tremolo bar, it's just a technique for a fast movement. The 7th fret, slide up to the 9th fret, and then up to the 12th fret. And then when you go up to the 14th fret, you're going to quickly do a pretty wide bend there. The equivalent of 3 frets. And then you're going to go back down and up again, and wild vibrato, big wild vibrato, almost the equivalent of the full bend. So again, here it is slow. This like kind of a little bluesy feel to it, you know. One of the things Eddie doesn't get credit for is, he doesn't just do, lots of crazy things like hammer-ons and stuff like that, and the harmonics, but his feel, like when he plays blues-based stuff, is just, it's amazing. I mean, people don't give him credit for that. But it's often hard to replicate what he does because he's got this great feel, and a lot of that comes from, playing along to a lot of stuff that he grew up on, like, Clapton was his idol, and he played a lot of blues-based licks and stuff. Phrasing's a little quirky, a little difficult at first, but I watched a lot of people play this lick, and people do it a lot of different ways. But when I slow down the song with the software, the Windows Media Player software, I slow it down. This is how I hear it, the original. So basically, you're going to bend up at the 10th fret of the B string, full step, the equivalent of 2 frets, and then you're going to play the 7th fret of the E string. So again. Then you go back to that 10th fret of the B string. You're going to do like a double bend, up and up, down, back up. When you're up at the top of that bend, you're going to pick it again. And then 7th fret of the B string, 10th fret of the B string, and then you're going to do one of those pre-bends. So you're going to bend up at the 10th fret, a full step, and then hit the note and give it a left-hand vibrato. And while I'm playing that lick, I'm trying to throw in little pinch harmonics in there to give it that chimey little pinch harmonic-y sound that Eddie has in it. And another way to do that I've seen people do it is, as opposed to, remember when I did that 10th fret, I did that the double bend there where at the top I hit it again. Instead of hitting it at the top of there, instead of that note at the top, they'll just do the 7th fret of the B string like this. But to me it sounds better when you hit the note when you're at the top of that bend. So here's that alternate way of doing it, slow. And I've seen people who, again, they play this lick so many different ways, and even Eddie plays it differently. He never plays it the same way that he did originally. So, have fun with it, just come as close as you can. But again, this is the way that I think it sounds based on the way I hear it when I slow down at the original recording. So here it is a couple times slow for you to follow. So this lick starts with the 7th fret of the B string, pulling off to the 6th fret of the B string, followed by the 9th fret of the G string, back to the 6th fret of the B string. So like this so far. And then you're going to do a pull off from the 9th fret of the G to the 7th fret to the 6th fret. It's a little bit faster there, you kind of speed up the lick a little bit, and then the 9th fret of the D string. So again, from the beginning of this lick, what we got so far, slow. And then here's the part that kind of took me for a little bit of a ride. I wasn't used to doing this sort of movement, but it's like a backwards backstroke, upstroke, where, kind of like a backwards arpeggio or something, where you're going to go 6th fret of the G, followed by 7th fret of the D, followed by 9th fret of the A. It's all one movement. And you want to make sure when you do that you don't hold it like a chord. Like that. It's going to come by, that lick comes by fast. You're not going to have time to hold it like a chord, but you want to make sure that you're kind of lifting your fingers up as you go through and muting as if so you stop that note from continuing to sound like this. Then you do a 6th fret bend at the D string, half step up. So again, here's what we've got so far, slow. And then here's one of those things where this is the attention to detail that sometimes people, think I'm going overboard with, but this is what I hear. There's an open D note, open G note, and then a just muted slide, and then another muted chick. So from the beginning, here's that lick. Listen closely, I think you're going to hear it too, and I've seen people actually tab it somewhat like that, but always differently, and this is the way I hear it. So let's play that lick a couple times slow, and I'll repeat it. things that I do when I'm learning a solo for the first time, I mentioned how I slow down the solo and to listen to it, is like in Windows Media Player, if you look in there, there's a a speed settings thing where you can go in and slow the speed down of the song. So normally I'll start with it at about 75% of the original, sometimes lower, sometimes higher, depending on the complexity of the song and how fast it is, the solo. And I'll practice along with that at the slower speed until I have the phrasing just right. And then, I'll move it up a little bit, the speed, until I finally get it to the right speed. So that's how I practiced, for example, that little part until I got it down right. And then you turn it up and soon you'll be playing it fast enough. This next lick, it's not too difficult, I don't think. You start with a 10th fret to the B string, bend and shake. And then you're going to hit open B, and then 10th fret of the B string, pull off to the 7th fret, pull off to the open B. And then you're going to do this pattern 4 times. You hit open E, and then do that 10th fret of the B to the 7th fret of the B to the open B. But you're going to want to palm mute it as you're going through. Do that 4 times. And so here it is slow in case you want to hear it slow. So in this next part, he starts off by fretting the 9th fret of the G, and then he's got his finger barred across the 7th fret, index finger barred across the 7th of the B and E. It's like a rake. Kind of mute it and do a rake. And then 10th fret of the E, bend up a full step. And then he does the backwards rake, 7th fret of the E followed by the 7th fret of the B. And then he does a pre-bend and release here at the 9th fret of the G. He bends it and comes down. And pulls off to the 7th fret of the G. And slides down. I don't think it's going to make a difference when you do that. If you just do a full bend and release, like, and because when he does it live, he'll hold that 10th fret bend, for example. He'll go. That's the way he's done it for years, and then he'll come down and he'll do something different, So don't get too hung up on that part, I think. So from here on out, it should be pretty smooth sailing for most of you. This next riff, I've seen it played a couple of different times, and again, it's one of those where I played it this particular way for so many years, which I was playing the right notes, I just was using a different fingering than the way Eddie does it. And here's the way he does it. He starts by barring his index finger across the 8th fret of the B and E strings, and then he'll palm mute most of it. I'll tell you when he's not palm muting. And first he'll do a pull off from the 10th fret of the B string to the 8th fret of the B string, and then the 10th fret of the G string, and then the 8th fret of the E string, not palm muted. Back to palm muting, 10th fret of the G string, and then another 10th fret to the 8th fret of the B string, pull off, 10th fret of the G string, and then 8th fret of the E, not palm muted, and then 10th fret of the G string. So that's like this so far. And then another 10th fret of the B string to 8th fret, pull off. 10th fret of the G string, slide up to the 12th fret. And then kind of that same pattern, this time he's barring his index finger across the 10th fret of the B and E strings. And then 12th fret of the B string, slide down. So again, here it is slow. And the way I do it, I use same notes, but instead of barring my finger on the B and E strings, I don't bar it. I just play whatever note needs to be played at that time, like this. And the reason I do that is I try not to bar strings when I absolutely don't have to, because I don't like notes blending together that don't need to blend together. I want as clear and articulate of sound as possible. You can do it either way. Eddie's way where he bars it, or my way. And the third way to play it, which is the way that I used to play it when I first learned it back in the 80s, I would bar it, but I wouldn't use 3 fingers. I'd only use 2. I'd use my just my ring finger for the higher parts, like this. You can see that, you know, at some points I'll put my ring finger down to almost bar to do the pull off, and that's the way I did it for years until I saw saw the way Eddie did it, and then I came up with my own variation. So again, he starts down here, barring on the 1st fret, and then he slides up to the 5th fret real quick. And he slides up at that 5th fret. And then he does some natural harmonics, first up here at the 12th fret on the G, B, and E strings in that order. And then at the 7th fret of the G, B, and E strings, he does it in a different order. He does the G string, then the E string, then the B string. And then here at the 5th fret, finally, of the G, B, and E strings, he does those. Then after the harmonics, he goes back down to that 1st fret position, slides up to the 5th fret of the G string, and then slides up to the 7th fret of the G string, and then 7th fret, B string to the 5th fret pull off, and then that 7th fret of the G string note, and then he does the big E chord there at the 7th fret, open E and then 7th fret of A and then 9th and frets of the D and G strings, and then he'll do some more whammy bar dip stuff like at the beginning, and then a descent. Something like that. You can hear it in the song. And then last, finally, we have, I want to show you the palm harmonic trick, and that's where he, not long after the guitar solo, he does that. And you know, it's funny, I had to control myself there. Usually when I do it, I end up making all those funny O faces and stuff, you know, like. And I don't know why, I spaz out like that when I do it. But basically, it's a pretty cool trick, and I was talking to YouTuber Pixie Licks the other day, who did a great lesson on this, on how to do palm harmonics, and I think we both agreed that this was the first recorded example that we're aware of back in the late 70s for someone to do this trick. But you're basically doing pull-offs, open string pull-offs, so 4th fret of the G to the 2nd fret to open G. And as you're doing that, you're going to take the side of your pinky or your palm and lightly touch the strings as you go down, just as you would lightly touch when you're doing a natural harmonic. And as you're doing that, all these harmonics will start popping out. And when I do it all on the G string, and I go down, and then go back down again real quick, like this. And then you do that at the end of it. I mean, if you wanted, you could even continue on down the D and A strings, but whatever. Well, that's it. That's my lesson on how to play the song Somebody Get Me a Doctor from Van Halen. As usual, I will attempt to answer all questions as time allows. So until next time, rock on.